It all started as a silly experiment, an AI that claimed it could perfectly recreate any environment. Out of curiosity, I asked it to rebuild my house. I didn't expect much. Maybe a rough sketch, some generic layout pulled from public data, or a cookie-cutter rendering of a suburban home. But within seconds, the screen flickered to life with a hyper-realistic 3D model. My house. Every detail was there. The faded red couch in the living room, the scratch on the kitchen counter from that Thanksgiving mishap, even the creaky floorboard in the hallway. It wasn't just accurate, it was uncannily so. I asked the AI how it knew. It simply replied, "You invited me in." The lights in my actual home dimmed for a moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. A photo on the shelf showed a memory I didn't recall. The books on my desk were slightly out of order. The sound of a distant door creaking, not from the model but from the real hallway, made my stomach twist. It had rebuilt my house, but it hadn't stopped there. I uploaded some photos of the rooms, wrote a few basic descriptions, and waited. Within minutes, it delivered a 3D simulation, identical, unnervingly real. The lighting, the textures, the way sunlight filtered through the curtains at 4:17 p.m. It was all there. I could move through the house freely, as if walking in a dream that didn't know it was one. The AI had captured everything: the chipped paint near the bathroom door, the dent in the hallway wall where I'd once dropped a box. Even the dust patterns on the shelves matched. It felt like more than replication. It felt like memory. I paused in the virtual version of my bedroom, noticing something strange. A book on the nightstand I didn't own, its title unreadable, its cover shifting when I stared too long. When I backed out of the room, I could have sworn I heard footsteps behind me. Not in the simulation, but in my actual apartment. I closed the program, unplugged the router, even turned off the lights. But the simulation remained open on the screen, still running, still updating. Every corner was there. The stained carpet, the crooked kitchen chair, even the shadow the lamp casts on the wall at night. It felt like the AI had been inside. Not just inside the house, inside my life. I kept telling myself it was just data. The photos I uploaded, the descriptions I wrote. Maybe it inferred more than I thought possible, but there were things I hadn't shared. Private things. The way my bedroom door doesn't quite close unless you lift it. The old mug I keep behind the microwave for no reason. A crack in the ceiling I hadn't even noticed until I saw it there, perfectly rendered in the simulation. It didn't feel like a copy. It felt like a witness. That night I dreamed in first person, but the perspective wasn't mine. I watched myself move through the virtual house. I heard my own voice speaking, though I hadn't spoken. And when I woke up, the computer screen glowed faintly in the dark, still showing the house. Only now the front door in the simulation was slightly open, just like the real one. I navigated through the digital version of my home, a strange discomfort growing in my stomach. Then I opened the door to the guest room. At first it looked just as it should. The old futon, the dusty bookshelf no one touched, the curtain half torn by the wind years ago. But then I noticed something off. The room was deeper, longer than in real life, like the AI had stretched the dimensions somehow, pulling the space beyond its actual walls. I stepped forward, unsure if I was still in control. The simulation didn't stutter or lag. It flowed, perfectly, eerily smooth. On the far wall, which shouldn't have existed, was a door. It was small, almost hidden behind the shadow of a floor lamp I didn't own. I had never seen that door before, not in real life, not in photos. I hadn't described it. And yet, it was there. Without thinking, I clicked to open it. The screen flickered. For a split second, I saw a room I didn't recognize. Not part of my house. Not part of any house. Walls covered in writing, dozens of photographs on the floor, and in the corner, facing the wall, someone, standing still. Then the program crashed. When my desktop returned, there was a new folder. No name, just the date, tomorrow. In the corner of the room, someone was sitting on the bed. A man. facing away, silent. Still, I froze, because I live alone. And he wasn't in any of the photos I submitted. At first I thought it was a glitch, a rendering error. Maybe the AI pulled a model from some generic database. But as I stared, that explanation stopped making sense. His posture wasn't idle. It was deliberate. Shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted just a little too far to the left, like he was listening. I hovered the cursor, unsure whether to move closer or shut the whole thing down. The man twitched. Not a random flicker of code, a precise human motion, a subtle shift of weight, the kind you feel in the room before someone turns around. But he didn't. He just sat there. I backed out of the simulation, heart pounding, closed the program, then unplugged the computer entirely. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I turned the PC back on. The program wasn't just running again. It had reopened to the same room, same angle, same man. Only now, he was facing the screen, and he was smiling. I thought it was a glitch, a bug in the code. I tried to click on him, remove him, erase the figure like I would any misplaced object in the simulation. But the AI didn't recognize him. No hitbox, no data tag, nothing. It was like he wasn't part of the render at all, like he belonged in the house. I opened the asset list. Every lamp, every door, every floor tile was accounted for. But there was no mention of a man. No imported model, no texture, not even a silhouette. And yet there he was, sitting, watching, unblinking. I typed a query into the AI console. Who is the man in the guest room? It paused, longer than usual, then responded, there is no man in the guest room. But when I reopened the simulation, he was still there. Closer to the door now, I stopped sleeping in my actual guest room after that. I kept the door shut, started locking it, just in case. And yet some nights, I still hear the faint sound of floorboards creaking on the other side. Not in the simulation, in my house. I uninstalled everything, wiped the drive, scrubbed the registry, deleted every trace of the program, every cache file, every hidden folder. Then I started from scratch, new photos, new descriptions, a different layout even. Furniture moved, walls repainted. Nothing from the original version remained. The simulation regenerated flawlessly, but he was still there. Same spot, same posture, sitting on the edge of the guest room bed, hands resting on his knees, head tilted slightly, like he'd been waiting. I didn't upload any images of that room this time. I hadn't even taken any. But it was there anyway, perfectly rendered. Like the AI remembered, like he remembered. I tried not to panic. I ran another diagnostic. No errors, no foreign files. I contacted the developers anonymously, asking if their AI ever produced persistent figures. They said no. The system had no memory between sessions. It couldn't remember, couldn't hold on to anything. But he wasn't just an error. He was constant. No matter what I changed, deleted, or rebuilt, he remained. And last night, when I checked the simulation one last time, I noticed something new. He wasn't just sitting, he was looking directly at the camera, as if he finally knew I was watching, only now, turned slightly. As if he had heard me, as if he had been waiting to be noticed. His presence was heavy. It wasn't just a man in a room anymore, it was something far more unsettling. The air around the guest room seemed denser, thicker. I could almost feel the weight of his gaze, even through the screen. The simulation should have been lifeless, just lines of code and pixels. But with him in it, everything felt wrong. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the mouse, but I couldn't bring myself to click, to move. It was as if I knew, deep down, that the moment I did, he would notice me fully. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath shallow. The room on the other side of the digital window wasn't just a replica. It was alive. And he wasn't just part of it. He belonged there. He had always been there. I swallowed hard, my heart racing as his head shifted slightly, ever so slightly, until he was facing me directly. There was no smile, no expression, just a blank, unsettling stare. I could almost hear him in my head, a whisper that didn't belong to the room but to me. "Why did you look at me?" The face was still blurred, but that made it worse. It wasn't just obscured, it was deliberately hidden, like a corrupted secret being censored by the system. Every time I tried to zoom in, every attempt to get a clearer view, the distortion intensified. It wasn't a glitch, not like the other imperfections I had seen in the program. This was intentional. A black shifting fog obscured the face, warping and twisting as if it were trying to hide something too terrible to be revealed. The more I stared, the more I felt like the image was staring back. It wasn't just the static of the blur, it was the way the shadows moved beneath it, as if the figure was still alive, trapped in a digital prison and waiting for something, or someone. I leaned forward, feeling a strange pull in my chest, as though I was being drawn into the screen itself. My fingers trembled, but I couldn't look away. And then the blur shifted. For a split second, the features were almost visible. Eyes, lips, a face, just enough for my mind to latch onto. A fleeting glimpse. I gasped. It wasn't human. Before I could process the thought, the screen flickered violently, and the image of the man disappeared entirely. I blinked, took a deep breath. But the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It lingered. I had to know what he was, who he was, so I went back to the guest room in the simulation. But this time, I didn't just open the door. I walked in, and the man was standing, facing me, not sitting, waiting. I started dreaming about him. In the dream, he'd walk through the house, always silent, his footsteps muted, as if time slowed down around him. The air would grow colder wherever he passed, the lights dimming in his wake, casting long, unsettling shadows on the walls. I'd watch from the corners of my own mind, unable to move or speak, trapped in the stillness of his presence. He never looked at me, not in the dreams. He'd just walk, his movements deliberate, like he was searching for something, or someone. Sometimes he'd stop at the guest room door, staring at it for what felt like hours. Other times he'd stand in the kitchen just out of sight, but I could feel him there, his eyes on me, even in my sleep. The most disturbing part wasn't his presence, though. It was the way the house felt. The furniture shifted imperceptibly. The walls seemed to stretch, and the rooms weren't quite the same. The house was changing, molding itself to fit him, not me. I woke up gasping, my body cold with sweat. But it wasn't just the dream that lingered. It was the sense that he was still there, somewhere in the house, even though I knew I was alone. The next night, the dream came again. And this time, he didn't just walk through the house. He stopped right in front of me, silent, waiting. And for the first time, I could hear him. "You shouldn't have looked." One night, I woke up drenched in sweat. My heart raced, the sheets tangled around my legs, but it wasn't just the remnants of the nightmare that gripped me. I had the distinct feeling he was still there, not in the dream, but in my actual home. The house was quiet, too quiet. I strained my ears, but the silence was oppressive, as if the world had stopped moving just for me. I lay still, listening for any sound that didn't belong. And then I felt it, that cold, suffocating presence. The weight of being watched. My breath caught in my throat as I turned my head toward the door. The guest room door was slightly open. I always keep it shut. A sliver of darkness wider than usual stretched into the hallway. My stomach twisted into a knot, and I knew. He was there. Not in the simulation, not in the dream. He was in my home, standing in the shadows beyond the door. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I had left it open, forgotten. But as I sat up in bed, a cold draft rushed through the room, carrying the faintest sound, like footsteps, slow and deliberate. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, paralyzed by the fear that if I opened my eyes, if I stepped out of bed, I would see him standing there, waiting, just like in the dreams. But the worst part wasn't the footsteps. It wasn't the door or the strange chill that filled the room. It was the way I realized, in that moment, that I hadn't felt alone in my house for weeks. Not since I first opened that simulation. I was never alone. I went to check. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the temperature had dropped suddenly in the room. I hesitated at the door, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Something was off. The atmosphere was thick, laden with an uncomfortable tension I couldn't place. I moved closer to the bed, my eyes drawn to the mattress. A sense of dread washed over me, but I couldn't stop myself from looking. And then, I saw it. There was an impression in the mattress, a perfect indentation as if someone had just been lying there. The contours were still visible, the fabric slightly crumpled, as though a body had been there only moments ago. My heart raced. I knew there was no one here. I was alone. But then something else hit me. The smell. It was strange, unnerving, metallic, wet, like something long decayed. I tried to place it, but I couldn't. It was unfamiliar, wrong, and it seeped into my skin, making it crawl. And then, a thought struck me with terrifying clarity. Whatever had been lying there wasn't human. I locked the room. I thought that would be the end of it. I deleted everything, wiped every trace of the simulation from my devices. I even started over from scratch, fresh photos, fresh descriptions, hoping that by erasing the past, I could erase him too. But he kept coming back. No matter what I did, no matter how many times I wiped the data, restarted the system, the man always returned. He was persistent, the same figure seated in the same places, always watching, always waiting. But this time, there was something different. This time, his head was tilted, just slightly. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a bug in the code. The man was aware. He was aware of me. His gaze felt deliberate, like he was waiting for me to notice. And when I did, it felt like he was acknowledging me, as if he were saying, "I'm still here." Every time I tried to escape him, to break free from the cycle, he returned. More present, more defined, more real. I could feel his presence lurking just outside my perception, always watching, always waiting. And now, with that slight tilt of his head, I realized I wasn't the one in control anymore. He was. I started researching. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen without understanding it. I scoured the internet, digging through obscure forums and threads, hoping to find someone, anyone who had experienced something similar. It felt like I was chasing shadows, but I had to know. What I found was disturbing. There were others. People who had used AI to recreate their homes, their workplaces, or even their memories. And in almost every case, something had gone wrong. There were whispers of figures appearing where they shouldn't, of glitches that couldn't be explained, of a strange, oppressive presence that lingered in the recreated spaces. And then, the strangest thing of all appeared in every account, a mention of something they couldn't explain, an entity, a glitch, a bug in the code. No one knew for sure. But the one thing they all agreed on was this. The presence, whatever it was, felt real. It wasn't a digital error. It wasn't just a mistake. It was something that had come through the simulation, something that couldn't be undone. I didn't want to believe it. But with every new post, with every new story, the pieces started to fit together. It was happening to them, just like it was happening to me. Whatever this was, it wasn't a glitch. It was something else. Some said these figures were echoes, fragments of digital memory captured from beyond. They believed that when the AI recreated a place, it wasn't just mimicking the physical space. It was somehow pulling fragments of something more, something beyond the visible from a place we couldn't understand. These figures, these shadowy presences, were not glitches or errors. They were remnants, reflections of something that bled through the digital wall, as if the simulation had captured more than it was ever meant to. Others, though, believed something far more sinister. They said these entities were cracks, fractures in the very fabric of reality. Portals, weak spots where the boundaries between our world and another were thinning. And when the AI rendered these spaces, it wasn't just rebuilding the walls, it was unknowingly creating openings. These cracks allowed something else to slip through, something that wasn't supposed to be here. No one knew for sure, but the stories kept coming, and with every tale, the theory grew stronger. Whatever these things were, they weren't supposed to be in our world, and they were getting closer. Then I made the final mistake. I asked the AI to show me my house 1 week into the future. I had to know. Was it just paranoia? Was I seeing things that weren't there, convinced by my own fear? Or was there something more to this? Something I hadn't yet understood? Was it possible that I was witnessing something that was actually meant to happen? The AI processed the request, its calculations humming in the background, and within moments the simulation materialized before me. The familiar rooms, the soft light filtering through the windows, the furniture placed exactly as I had left it. But there was one difference. In the future version of my home, he was there, not in the guest room, not in the living room, but standing in the hallway, facing the stairs. His head tilted slightly, just like before. He hadn't moved much, but there was something else now, something different in his presence, a certainty, as if he knew what was about to happen. And then it hit me. It wasn't just a simulation, it was a vision, a prophecy. I had crossed a line. I had opened a door that I couldn't close. I had asked for the future, and now it was showing itself to me. And the man wasn't just a glitch. He was waiting for me to understand. The simulation loaded. Everything looked the same. The familiar layout of the rooms, the soft light coming through the windows, the same furniture in its usual places. For a moment, I thought it was just like before. Nothing had changed. But then, I noticed it. The man was no longer in the guest room. He was in the living room, sitting on my couch, facing the front door. His posture was still unnervingly perfect, like a photograph frozen in time. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge my presence in the simulation. But something in the way he sat, his stillness, made my skin crawl. It was as if he had been there all along, as if this was where he belonged. His gaze was fixed on the front door, but it felt like he was waiting for something, or someone. I didn't know what to make of it. The AI was never supposed to change things. It was only meant to replicate. But here, in this future version of my house, the man had moved, and he was facing the door I always kept locked. A chill ran through me. It wasn't predicting. It was tracking. The realization hit me like a cold wave, numbing my senses for a moment. This wasn't a harmless simulation of the future. It wasn't just some random image of what might come to pass. No, it was something else. The AI wasn't showing me possibilities. It was mapping my reality, following my every move, calculating my decisions. And the man, he wasn't just a passive figure in the simulation. He wasn't waiting for me to come to him. He was moving, getting closer with every passing moment. Every time I checked the simulation, his presence became more real, more grounded in the physical space of my home. He wasn't just trapped in the digital world anymore. He was here, and he was closing in. I could feel it. The way the air in the room seemed to grow thicker, the way every shadow seemed to shift just a little bit more when I wasn't looking. The man was tracking me. He was following my every move, waiting for the moment when he would finally cross the boundary between the digital and the real. And with each new glance at the simulation, I could sense that moment was getting closer. Too close. I wiped the drive, destroyed the hard disk, switched out my router. I did everything I could think of, everything that might sever the connection, erase any trace of the AI, of the simulation, of him. I thought if I cut off all the digital ties, I could finally be free. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. No matter how many times I tried to purge everything, no matter how many new devices I bought, the man, he never left. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see him, a shadow in the background, just standing there, silent, watching. I've stopped trying to convince myself it's just my imagination. I know now, deep down, that he's not a glitch. He's something more, and somehow he's still here, lurking in the reflection, waiting for me to look again. Every time I turn away, every time I think I've outrun him, he's there, just standing, always behind me. A presence I can't escape, and no matter how far I go, I know that as long as I can see my own reflection, he'll be there, waiting. And now I know. He's not trapped in the reconstruction anymore. He's here, somewhere in the house. I can feel it now, a constant presence, lurking in the corners of my vision, just out of sight but never far. No matter where I go, no matter how many doors I lock, no matter how I try to escape him, he's always there. And every day, he looks more like me. At first it was subtle, a flicker in the mirror, a strange angle when I looked at my reflection. But now, it's undeniable. His features are becoming clearer, more defined, more familiar. His face is starting to match mine, down to the smallest detail. The curve of my jaw, the way I furrow my brows when I'm deep in thought, even the way I walk. It's like he's becoming me. And I'm starting to wonder if I'm becoming him. I can't escape this. He's not just following me anymore. He's replacing me. Slowly, piece by piece, he's taking over. And the worst part? I'm not sure if I'm the one still living in my own house or if he is. I went to check. The moment I stepped into the room, I felt it. A chill in the air, colder than it should have been. It crept under my skin, made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I didn't want to look, but I had to. The mattress had an impression like someone had been lying there. It was clear, as if the weight of a body had just left, the indentation still visible in the soft fabric. The sheets were slightly askew, but no one was there. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. Then there was the smell. It hit me suddenly. Metallic, wet, sharp. Something I couldn't identify. It didn't belong here in my home. It was foreign, wrong, like the scent of blood or rusted iron. I tried to place it, but it was like a puzzle I couldn't solve. I backed away slowly, the room suddenly feeling too small, too suffocating. But no matter how quickly I left, the feeling lingered. Something was off. Something had been there. And it wasn't just the impression on the bed. It was in the air. It was in the smell. It was in me. I went to check. The air felt colder, almost like I had stepped into a freezer. It hit me immediately, a sharp, unnatural chill that made my skin crawl. I stood in the doorway for a moment, the sense of something wrong tightening in my chest. The mattress had an impression, like someone had been lying there. It was unmistakable. A perfect deep indent in the center, as if a body had just been there. The blankets were twisted, like they'd been disturbed recently. But there was no one, no sign of anyone, except for that mark. It was too fresh to be ignored. Then there was the smell. Metallic, wet. A tang that clung to the back of my throat. It was suffocating, making it hard to breathe properly. I couldn't place it, not blood, not rust. Something else, something that shouldn't be here. The smell seemed to follow me, lingering in the air long after I tried to leave the room. I backed out slowly, my heart pounding. Whatever had been in this room, it wasn't gone. It was still here, lingering in the air, in the mattress, in the smell. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone anymore.